Cody Johnson, welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Where am I reaching you right now? You look like you might be on the road.
Yeah, we started out in Alabama for Dean Dillon Songwriters and Stories tribute. It was really cool, and then we had to go to Nashville yesterday to do a ton of interviews, album release stuff, and then last night we had a double number one party for the Painter and Dirt Cheap at the BMI headquarters, and then we got on the bus at about midnight and drove to St. Paul, Minnesota for a show tonight. We're in Kansas City, Missouri tomorrow.
Oh, and you're on the bus right now.
Yeah, I'm sitting in my house.
Well, I hope it's comfortable because it sounds like you're spending a lot of time on it.
Oh yeah, this is my home away from home.
Well, I want to talk about start out about your real home back in Texas. You grew up around Huntsville, Texas, right?
Yes, sir.
And so this is about, I think, 70 miles or so north of Houston. And I'm wondering if you were to drive through town back when you were a kid, tell me what it looked like.
Well, I grew up towards Lake Livingston, which is about 30, 40 minutes from Huntsville, even further northeast. And there was really a few schools to go to, and it was kind of what we called an open enrollment, where you could, the county was so big you didn't have to go to one particular school. So I went to Groveton, and when you drive through Groveton, Texas, there's a Brookshire Brothers, there's a little Mexican restaurant, there's a car wash and a couple of gas stations, and then there's the town square right in the middle with some hardware stores and some, lawyer firms and real estate stuff like that. And that's unless you take a left and go to the football stadium in the school, that's it. You're already out of Groveton.
So not a lot there. I guess it's probably a little bigger now, I would think.
Nope.
Oh no.
No, it stayed the same all these years. I've been back a few times and visit, some of my ag teacher is a pretty important person to me, Mr. Fortenberry, and it ain't changed much. I've gone to homecoming and it still looks the same. And but when I got older, when I graduated, I moved to Huntsville so that I could get a job, working for the state of Texas at the prison there, and so I called Huntsville home, and it was obvious. Honestly, it was just easier when people would say, "Where are you from?" and you could say Huntsville, and they'd say, "Oh, the prisons."
Yeah.
But if you say Groveton, they go, "Where the hell is Groveton?"
Well, what about the house where you grew up? What did that kind of look and feel like?
As a kid, we grew up down Pipeline Road, and it was a long dirt road, and we lived at the very end of it. We had a single wide trailer house that my dad had built onto with some rooms, and had a little chicken coop and a little barn, and we lived on 4 or 5 acres there. And most of the people that lived on that church were people that we went. I mean, on that church, most of the people that lived on that road were people we went to church with, their family members. My grandma and grandpa lived right down the road, and it was the kind of place. So that I went to Groveton, but that little community I lived in was called Sebastopol. And don't ask me to spell it. I lived there my whole life and still can't spell it. But it's right on the lake, and it was the kind of place where, there was a store called Lawrence's about 3 miles down the road, and it had a gas station. There was it had a grocery store, and Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence, worked cows and baled hay for a living, plus the store. And we had a little monthly tab where Mama could tell me to go to the store, and I'd ride my bike down there, and Miss Leela would have all the grocery list stuff on the counter, and I'd sign the ticket, and she'd give me an ice cream. I'd sit over and listen to the old men talk about how it was too hot or too cold, or we had too much rain or not enough rain, and I can't bale hay, and I got too much hay to bale, and then I'd ride my bike home, and it was very picturesque. It was very Mayberry growing up.
I mean, you're not that old, Cody, but it sort of sounds like something from the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only 37, but where I grew up, it was definitely dated.
Yeah.
I didn't get a cell phone until I was 18, so I mean, we lived pretty simple lives.
And you had a lot of family around, huh? So cousins or aunts and uncles?
Yep, yep. We always had, growing up, we always had family around, and it's funny because it's such a stark contrast of we had my dad had two brothers, and they're married and kids and cousins and all this, and my my mom, her side of the family was pretty big, and I think a lot of people have passed away over the years, and I grow up and have this career where I'm going here and going there, and I'm on a jet, and then I'm on a bus, and then I'm coming home, and it's a stark contrast to what I do now with the ranch in Texas. Because when I come home, I really don't see many people, and I still my parents. We see my parents a couple times a month, but when I go home, it's pretty much about Brandy and those two girls. So
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, Cody, who was doing all that cooking in your family?
well, when I was a little kid, you're talking infant to 12 years old. My grandmother, my mama on my dad's side,
Really?
she could, man, she was a cook. She'd drink a pot of coffee a day, and all she did was cook, read her Bible, and drink coffee. And I think in her lifetime, I think my dad told me she had read the Bible through 13 times. And she'd just drink coffee and cook, and I can always remember her being there in her apron, and she'd be singing, just cooking, and it was a good Southern food too. Everything had way too much starch and Velveeta and and flour, and it was just by the time you get through eating, you feel like you could roll over in the floor and just nap for 12 hours. But now my wife and my mama wasn't a small lady either, but it's so funny because now my wife, she's 110 pounds soaking wet, but she cooks like she eats all the time. She's a amazing cook when it comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas, man. She gets it done, and I'm like, I try to help because I'm a decent cook myself, but I
Oh,
try to help.
really?
And
Okay.
I've just learned to stay out of Brandy's way when she's cooking.
Well, it sounds like maybe you picked up a few things from your grandmother.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely did.
What was her name?
Lois Faye Johnson.
Lois Fay, and she went by Lois.
She went by Lois, but to us, she was Mamaw.
So, was there a dish in particular that kind of stands out for you that you really, that reminds you of home?
My nana on my mom's side, her name was Geraldine Freeman, and so she was Nana. So when we were growing up, she'd always make banana pudding, and it was homemade from scratch. And she said that's Nana's pudding. And I would always, man, I'd look forward to every time we'd go to Nana's house. I knew we was gonna get some Nana pudding. And it wasn't until about, I think I was about 15 or 6. I think I was 16 years old because I drove myself up there to Nacogdoches. And I'll never forget, I started eating this pudding and I kind of looked at her and she said, "What?" I said, "This ain't homemade, is it?" She said, "You better not tell nobody." She had bought it at the store and tried to pass it off. And I caught it quick. I was like, "This ain't your homemade pudding. This is something you bought from the store." And I'll never forget the shock of the fact that she would feed me something from the store she didn't make. She said, "Well, I didn't have time to make it this time."
Well, she wasn't expecting to get busted, I don't think.
I don't think so, but my taste buds told her different.
Uh, well, Cody, I want to ask about your dad and the prison that he worked at. Was this the state penitentiary?
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize that everybody thinks about Huntsville, Texas, and they think, there's the one prison. But in Walker County and in two of the surrounding counties, there's 7 maximum security prisons right there, all within about an hour drive of each other. And each prison has its own role for the state. Um, for instance, downtown, the Walls unit we call it the nursing home because it's where, a bunch of, when they've been in there for a long time and they get older and they need better medical care and stuff. And that's where they go. But that's also where they carry out the executions is at that prison. If you go to Livingston, that's the Pulaski unit, and that's where death row is. If you go to Holiday unit, that's where your transit, your intake, when you come into the system. If you go to the bird unit, that's all of our transportation, as far as buses and trucks and all that. If you go to the wind farm, it's kind of a half transit, half lifers. There's a maximum security area, but it has a big trustee farm with guys that work all over the city of Huntsville. And if you go further out of town, there's the Ferguson unit and the Eastham unit, and those are two very very large, very dangerous maximum security prisons. And, on the side of that, there's the Ellis unit, the Estelle unit, that are kind of the same way. So my dad started working for the state of Texas in the late '80s at Eastham, and it was a pretty brutal environment. There wasn't a whole lot of regulation back then.
And which one did you work for?
Well, I started at Holiday Unit, which was, your intake. You never really know. You might have a guy that got a DWI, and then right behind him there's a capital murder case, and this guy could have been a sexual offender or whatever it is, and you just kind of never know what you're getting. And then from there, I moved to the Gory Unit, which is a sexual offender treatment program unit, to where that's basically all that's housed at that unit, except for the trustee farm. And I worked on the trustee farm, taking crews out to go mow, clear fence lines, cut trees up, pick up after storms, just painting buildings, doing whatever needed to be done. And then from there, I moved to the wind farm. And at the wind farm, I was a field boss, where you work those guys that are your maximum security guys. You take them out in the field, and you work them in the field, picking vegetables or cotton, or clearing fence lines and things like that. But when I was working there, overtime paid time and a half. So I would get through with my job at 2:30 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that, and I would drive out to Eastham or Ferguson and clock in and work as many hours as they would let me work, sometimes till midnight, just making extra money to pad the paycheck.
And you're how old at this point?
I started working there when I was 18.
I mean, Cody, there can't be a whole lot of country stars that have done this. I'm sure there's a few, but you had to have taken away some pretty interesting lessons. I mean, what are some things that you kind of learned from that experience?
I think discernment is a really good quality. I can tell within about 4 words of talking to somebody what their intentions are, and really decipher pretty quickly what they're after, whether it's from me or I can tell genuine people from not genuine people very, very quickly. And I developed a way to not only notice it, but to monitor it in a way that they don't know that I'm monitoring it. Not playing dumb, but just a little bit of playing dumb, and let them speak and tell you what their intentions are, especially in the business world. Um, I've played dumb in front of a lot of big business meetings and walked away from it and looked at my manager and went, "Nope, absolutely not."
Because you can
Uh,
just tell that maybe their intentions were not I don't know, honorable, I guess.
yeah, and also in violent situations where even in the public, whenever I'm in a place and I'm with my wife or my kids, and I can see there's certain people I know to keep my eye on. I always know the exits. I always kind of scan the room. I pay attention to people's body language differently. The way that they, even whenever I've been in situations after working there where it's been somewhat of a volatile situation, I can really read whether or not this guy's raising his voice and he's really going to do something, or if it's the quiet guy in the corner that's actually going to do something. And it's helped me out a lot through my life. I'm a very, very security minded person, and it's one of the reasons why we've hired a security team this year, is because with the massive crowds that I'm in now and the places that I'm going, it's hard for me to be Cody Johnson and still stay as security minded without people noticing it. So I've hired those two guys to, hey, look, this is how I want y'all to pay attention to these things. And they're both former Marines, and I'm in good hands now. But for a while, it bothered me that I couldn't be more security minded at my workplace.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, this experience has also kind of found its way into your music, too, hadn't it?
Yeah, here and there. There's a song on my new record, Leather. It's called "Jesus Loves You," and it kind of pokes at that prison thing a little bit. And there was an old song, I can't remember what record it was on. It's called "Guilty as Can Be," and that was kind of a story that I amended just enough that it wasn't the actual story, but it was pretty much the story from a guy that worked for me while I was there. And it's funny because Merle Haggard always sang about prison. It's different when you're locked up there versus being a guard there. And me and Jelly Roll have talked about it. He said, me and you ought to go back and go pick the maximum security, the worst one in Texas, and go put on a concert. I said, yeah, they'll love you. I don't know if they'll love me.
Yeah, you were on the other side of that for a while. Although I do think that'd be a pretty popular concert, Cody.
Yeah, and Jelly and I've talked about it a lot. The only difference between working there, when you really work there, and being locked up there, is at the end of the day you get to go home. But like Jelly was telling me, he said, he said it seems like it'd be easier for me to be in my cell and to not have to leave. But he's like, having to leave and go home, and then getting up the next morning and intentionally coming back and being in that environment all day long, that it plays with your head a little bit. And that it's not a glamorous job at all. There's some stories that I'll probably never tell anybody. Uh, but it wasn't all bad. It was good. I met some good people and learned a lot of life lessons.
Well, I want to ask you about another kind of area of your life that seems to have had a huge influence on you, and it's a kind of a guiding force in your life, and that's the church. Um, you grew up spending a lot of time in the church, and I'm wondering where you went. What was the physical place that you went when you were going to church early on, and what did it kind of look and feel like on a Sunday?
A little bitty country church called Friendship Harbor Church, and we were all very close knit. When I say a little country church, I mean that's what it was. You're talking 100 people, and not like these big mega churches that you see on television now. Uh, but it was just worship in the Bible. One thing that was difficult for me growing up was I didn't realize it until I was older, and I had kind of gone out my own way and completely left church and kind of, I won't say turned my back on God, but I dang sure didn't know where he was at. If he was looking for me, I didn't know it. I was raised in a very perfection doctrine, which is great. Like I was always told, might hear the preacher say, I don't want to just go to heaven. I want to be in the 144,000 in the latter rain. It's like, well, heaven's not good enough, and it was one of those cultures where if you went to Friday night to the football game and you drank a beer under the bleachers, oh man, you're going to hell. God's wrath is going to get you, and if somebody went through a divorce in the church, it was, oh, they're in the world, and devil's got them. And I'm like, it really ruined me a lot. I had a little bit of church hurt for a long time, and I've heard that term recently, church hurt, but it is real. To where you put so much pressure on an individual that they think that we're not worthy to talk to God, and we're not ever going to be good enough. And I've got news for anybody listening. We're all good enough. Uh, you know, Even Jesus himself said, Father, please let this cup pass from me. He said it 3 times, begging, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Even Jesus got mad in the temple and took a bullwhip to people and turned over tables, and he got angry. He was friends with sinners, prostitutes, and thieves and murderers. And if you said that today, like, hey, one of my best friends is a prostitute and my other best friend's a murderer, well, you'd be labeled as a pretty bad guy. But that was Jesus. And it's funny you mention that, because I stopped going to church with my family because people would just it turned into a huge meet and greet. People wanted autographs, they'd take pictures, and I said, I'm not doing that. That's not, I'm not going. Well, what I did was I failed my wife right there. Because as a man, you're supposed to be the leader of your home, especially in the spiritual sense. And I left it to her, and it caused a lot of issues. It caused a lot of problems that I didn't even know until this last year in my marriage. And we finally had to stop, sit down together, and go, hey, we've got to make some changes. And I admitted, I said, I failed you, and here's why. But we're going to take these girls to church every Sunday morning. We're going to pray over every meal. If we start to have an argument about something, or if there's something difficult in our marriage, we're not going to argue. We're going to pray together, and we're going to let God do his thing. We give God our finances, we give God our business and all this. And it hit me. I started really reading my Bible every day, and reading my devotionals every day, and reading books that help me. And it's not about perfection. It's about faith with deeds and acting those deeds out and showing that, hey, I'm not in control. This ain't Cody's world. This is his world, and everything I've got is a blessing that comes from him. And I'm gonna have faults. and I'm going to have failures, and I'm going to screw up. I may say the wrong thing, I may do the wrong thing, but I'm not running from him anymore. I'm running to him going, hey, help me not to do that. I know, help me not to be that way. What do I need to read? What do I need to do to change that about Cody, to just to be a better person, just a better man, a better husband, a better father? It's funny how he sits there and waits on you. No matter how bad you run off, he still waits on you. And, I liken it to that horse at the house. If he wants to run off, that's fine. But hey, when he gets hungry enough, he knows where his food's at. He knows where that nourishment's at. And he's eventually going to come back to the barn and say, I'm hungry. Can I please have something to eat?
Yeah. Cody, you also you seem to have gotten a lot of your early kind of musical inspiration from the church, and it was a really important place for you in terms of finding a voice, and maybe getting comfortable on a stage, or kind of being exposed to the performance of music and what it can do. Is that a fair thing to say?
I don't remember a time in my life without music. My mom and dad both sing. Both sides of the family all sang and played instruments. And, I learned how to play the bass guitar from my dad. And then I learned how to play drums from my dad. And I play the piano about halfway decent. I never really learned music. I just play all by ear and by feel. So even to this day, when I'm in the studio and I'm directing a band, I have to kind of have an interpreter to tell them exactly what I'm saying, because I can hear it and I can sing it and I know what it is, but I can't draw it out for you on paper. But yeah, we would sing a lot in church, and it was pretty obvious early on that I had a gift. And one thing I learned in church singing was that you can change when you're singing in church. You're the thermostat. You change the temperature in the room, and everyone else is just a thermometer, and they're going off of what you say and do. And so whenever I would sing something and make somebody, raise their hands, or they would come down for a prayer or whatever, I knew that I'd been a vessel that was used to affect them. The problem was I wanted to go to those honky tonks and do the same thing. And I did.
Gotcha. Well, yes, which probably, was not, that was probably frowned upon a little bit by some of the church folks. Yeah. What denomination was this?
Just a non-denominational, just a country Bible church.
Oh, okay. Well, your dad played the piano, right?
Yeah, he plays like Floyd Kramer good.
A lot of your musical journey is kind of connected to your dad. He played in your band, played drums with you for a while. How would you describe your musical connection to him?
Dad, he was just always so talented. He was really good at the bass guitar, and it. We always listened to. That's where I heard Charlie Daniels and Leonard Skinner and Merle Haggard and George Jones and Waylon Jennings for the first time. Was my dad, Rodney Crowell, Elvis Presley, all those sounds, Ray Price, Glenn Campbell. That was all those things that influenced me. Was my dad, playing that kind of music growing up, and I just had this love, this crazy, passionate love for country music, and I knew I always wanted to sing. I just didn't know how or when. When you're a kid growing up where I grew up, you think being a big country music star is like trying to be like an astronaut. Like, it's probably not in your cards. And my dad always supported me musically, no matter what I wanted to do. And we spent a lot of nights out in the garage with, playing guitar and drums and bass, and just inviting people over to just play. And I think that that's where the bug really got a hold of me. And he played bass in my band, not drums, but he played bass for quite a while. And we were just a three-piece, and we'd go play all the honky tonks and bars, and every marina that would have a band, and we'd play 4-hour sets and play every cover song we could possibly think of. And and then after a while, Dad was like, hey, I got to quit doing this. I can't be doing all this, and just I got to get out. So we got another bass player, and then we found a guitar player, and it just all of a sudden it just started snowballing. We just started building the band, and guys would be on for a while and they would fall off, and we'd get another one, and somebody would be on for a while and they'd quit, and we'd get another one. So I mean, and that's how the band was built.
Well, it sounds like your dad could kind of play a little bit of anything.
Oh yeah, Yeah, 100%.
I want to get to music in a minute, but before we do that, I just wanted to talk about rodeo for a second and your involvement in that. Was your dad? Did your dad kind of lead you into that as well?
Nope, I'm a first generation rodeo cowboy and rancher in my family. I always knew from the time I was a little kid, I will have horses and cows and I'm going to rodeo. But we didn't have money for that kind of stuff, so I paired up with a bunch of guys whenever I finally got to high school that rodeoed, and I started riding bulls. And I took this all upon myself. The only guidance I had was my ag teacher, Larry Fortenberry. He encouraged me to rodeo. He helped me learn how to ride bulls and swing a rope and to teach me about the cattle industry and agriculture. As far as how to manage land and things like that. And I always knew it was coming, but you have to be able to afford that kind of stuff. I had not an altercation, but a little bit of altercation with a guy last year that smarted off. I'm a fifth generation rancher. And I said, well, you know what's harder than being a fifth generation rancher? A first generation, when you have to do it all yourself and nothing got handed to you.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. Every blade of grass, every tractor, every bale of hay, it's all something that you worked for yourself. And I take a lot of pride in that. The rodeo world taught me a lot, and I still compete very competitively in the team roping world now. And we're breeding cutting horses and professional roping performance horses. And we raise Brayford calves at my place, and we've got a Hereford bull and Brahma cows, and we do hay production. And so we're full blown. My kids will be able to say, well, we're ranchers because Daddy was a rancher, which is what I always wanted.
You talked about some of your musical heroes a minute ago. Willie and Waylon and George Strait, people like that. Did you have a rodeo hero that kind of inspired you to get into it?
Chris Ledoux. Chris Ledoux was the guy that he was the awesome bareback rider world champion, freaking larger than life legend cowboy, but then he still had a record deal in Nashville and was playing shows. And I thought that's pretty dang cool right there. He was pretty inspiring, and I listened to a lot of his music as a kid going up and down the roads to different rodeos. And it definitely inspired me to keep chasing both dreams.
Riding a bull, the idea of riding a bull is kind of unimaginable to me. I mean, why anybody would get on one of those things is beyond me. But you've done a lot of it, and I'm wondering if there's a particular bull, a particular ride that kind of stands out in your memory.
Well, I want to be pretty clear. I was always the worst bull rider in the car. The guys that I surrounded myself with were very, very talented, and they'd been doing it since they were little kids. Riding steers and riding calves and working their way up. Whenever I started riding, I just kind of was like, it's almost like I got thrown right in the middle of the lion's den. Um, so I was getting on bulls that were way too much for me at the time. And my buddy Codrick that I still talk to all the time, we stay in touch, and we got to talking about it this year at my birthday. We were sitting up having a cold beer and reminiscing old times, and he said, what was crazy about you is he said you didn't have the natural talent for it that the rest of us were probably born with. He said, but you had more grit and more determination and heart than any of us put together. And he said, but we all knew that you were just doing it to do it, and that music was going to be, we all knew every time you'd play the guitar and sing, we were like, yeah, he's going to be a country music star. And he said, but we didn't want to tell you that, because you're out there riding bulls with us. And Codrick told me, he said, what's interesting about you is, he said, the easy bulls that you were supposed to ride, you'd always buck off of. And he said, the ones that you were not supposed to ride, when we get to the rodeo and we'd look at the draw and see what you drew, we'd think, God, he's gonna get murdered. He's gonna die. He's gonna wind up in the hospital. He said, and that's the bulls that you rode. And he said that told me a lot about yourself. Is that he said I figured out that you always needed to be the underdog and to have more of a challenge to fight back harder. And I can tell you every one of them. All those bulls that I rode that I did place and win and all that, they were bulls that I shouldn't have rode, but I rode the dog crap out of them. And then I'd go get on one that was supposed to be really easy, and I'd wind up on my face. I think I needed something to fight. I needed something to fight back to.
Well, you seem to have emerged from it okay, thankfully.
I'm limping around at 37. I'm still feeling some of it.
All right, Cody, I've got a few quick ones for you, and then I want to talk music. All right, so first question. Is Texas part of the South?
No, Texas is Texas. It's its own place. Once you go across that Red River or that Sabine River, then you might be arguably in the South. But when you get to Texas, you're just in Texas. And it's funny because last year we went to Australia and to go play shows with Luke Combs, and whenever they'd say, where you from, mate?" None of us said America. None of us said the USA. We all said Texas. As soon as it happened, I was like, well, that says it all right there.
Second question. What, in your opinion, is the best place to find Texas barbecue, and what do you order when you get there?
Man, as much as I hate the traffic and kind of the culture of the city, anywhere near Austin is probably some of the best barbecue. And I mean, you've got people, world renowned guys and women that devote their life literally to barbecue, and it's some of the most amazing stuff. There's a place in Elgin, Texas that's near Austin, called Southside Meat Market, and they have something that's called hot guts, and you can
Yeah.
order them by the pound. And I'm talking about it's some of the best brisket sausage you've ever had in your life. I've been eating it since I was a little kid. My papa and I used to drive over and get it and drive back. That's pretty Texan
That's about as Texan as it gets.
when you drive 3 hours to get barbecue and then go back home.
All right, last quick one. What's your favorite tattoo, if you have one?
Really, man, so my whole right arm is from here to here, and each piece tells a story. I've got, my Rockin' CJB, which is the band. We've got the Teos Vaqueros, which is a organization that I'm a member of, and obviously the bull logo. I keep all those things on my hand for accountability purposes. Um, you know, People I have to that I have to support, the standard that I have to live up to, and up my arm I've got pine trees for where I grew up in East Texas, and I've got red feathers for we're Growthton Indians, and then from here on up I've got my sunshine, Clara May, my oldest daughter, and then I've got my rose for Corey, and then all here I've got jasmine vines and blackberries for they bloom every year around Brandy's birthday, and I've got my ranch brand, the J Bar C, on the back of my arm, and each one of those things all has a significance for me. So it's hard to pick out any one.
You can't pick a favorite. Yeah.
Well, I'll just tell you the most odd is the bottom of my foot. That's the truth. I had my tattoo artist out on the road, and after the show, we may or may not have had a few drinks, and I asked him what's the weirdest thing he's ever tattooed, and he told me some things I'm not going to say on this podcast, but I was like, well, what haven't you tattooed? And he said, well, I've never done the bottom of a foot. And so one of my favorite Waylon Jennings songs is I've Always Been Crazy. And in the second verse, he says, I've always been different with 1 foot over a line. So if you were a carpenter, you would write 1 foot over a line. And I got that on the bottom of my foot like an idiot.
That's great. That's great. That had to hurt, though.
Well, not at the time, if you know what I mean. It hurt the next day, along with my head.
All right. Well, I want to ask you about a couple songs, and the obvious one to ask you about, especially given this conversation, is a great new song called "That's Texas," and you played it. I think you played it for the first time at the CMT Awards live. Just tell me, what kind of reaction do you get when you play that song, and especially when you're in the Lone Star State?
When I was coming up through music, I was told very, very quickly in Nashville that I would never make it because I was just a Texas artist, and I had a cowboy hat on, and my music was too country. And basically, you're going to need a new producer, and you're going to have to put, snap tracks in your music and comb your hair different and wear skinny jeans and kind of have this look to make it. And I wasn't going to do that. So I went home and built my own brand. And for years and years and years, we would not play anything that had the word Texas in it because we didn't want to be labeled as a Texas country artist.
Really?
Or a Texas band. Oh, yeah, it's just a band from Texas. I mean, how would you feel if somebody said, "Yeah, he does podcasts, but he's just this. He just does this podcast." It kind of puts that stigmatism on you. So, and when we came around to choosing music for this record, that song "That's Texas" comes across, and I said, you know what? I'm at a point in my career where I can sing whatever I want, and you're damn right. I'm from Texas, and so I think this song took a turn where it's more like Sweet Home Alabama. Like you don't just play Sweet Home Alabama in Alabama; you play it
Right.
anywhere.
In
We play,
Australia.
yeah, we played That's Texas in Nashville, and people went crazy. And I went, boy, if that ain't full circle, I don't know what is.
Well, it's a great song, and I just it's you can't hear it and not move a little bit. It's just got a great beat to it, and just a lot of fun. So you must have fun playing it.
Oh yeah, it's rowdy.
So Cody, you got a new song out called "I'm Gonna Love You" with Carrie Underwood, and you are selling out. I mean, big, crowds these days. And, you know, you're traveling all over the place and you've got, a million fans out there. But to partner with Carrie Underwood had to be a big deal for you. She's been at this a long time and she's about as big as they get. What was it like to you to be able to do this song with her?
She has been so great to work with. I think people have preconceived notions about what a big star is like, and she's not that. She is very down to earth, very easy to work with, and so talented and so gracious. I mean, even down to the point of like, hey, what colors are you wearing for the music video so I don't wear something stupid? And here, I'll send you some pictures of what I'm wearing. Okay, thanks, I appreciate it, buddy. And and it's just it's like having a friend that you didn't know you had. It's also really fun to sing with someone that challenges you, to know what caliber of vocalist that she is. That helps me step my game up. It's been a real pleasure, and she's gone above and beyond. I mean, even when we did the music video, I mean, we worked in there for 12 hours that day, and she never took the smile off her face and never complained. And I thought, man, what a great deal. And I think that also speaks to the song too, and it speaks to the point where I'm at in my career where someone like Carrie would say, yeah, I'm in. Um, and the song period first, before me, before Carrie, the song is so well written and the melody is so great that, I mean, it's a powerhouse by itself. I mean, if I played you the demo of it, you would love it just as much. But then you get me and Carrie together on it, and it took it to another level.
Well, it must be fun to be rolling that out. Do y'all have any plans to perform it together in the near future?
We've talked about it. I mean, obviously, it debuted in the top 30, and we all kind of know what that means when a song does something like that. We're like, okay, it's headed to some pretty big heights. So we've kind of been looking at schedules of like where do we perform this together? Are we, do we concentrate on just, like your big events, TV events or award shows and stuff like that? Or do I, do I fly you into here or do I fly in to meet you here? Or, and we're obviously going to have I've done something, starting next year. We have video walls at my shows in these hockey and basketball arenas, to where we've got a video of Carrie singing the song, and we're going to actually get to let the fans experience seeing her sing her part, even though she's not here. Because it would be kind of weird to play the song without her. And I'm not into all that digital crap. Like, that ain't my game. But when you have something this big, you kind of have to cater to that situation.
Well, that sure would be exciting for folks if y'all were to pull that off, and I'm sure you will. So, Cody, this is going to come out close to Christmas, so I got to just ask you a couple of Christmas songs. When you were growing up, was this a big deal in your house, Christmas?
Well, yeah, I mean, anything that had to do with music, Halloween and Thanksgiving don't have music. And in my family, everything revolved around music. So at Christmas time, we had a whole new set list of stuff to play.
Who's the most excited person in your house when it comes to Christmas these days?
Oh man, both my daughters. It's crazy. I'm not going to say too much because in case my kids listen to it, but my oldest daughter has already kind of figured things out, if you know what I mean. And and I'm like, hey, you better keep your mouth shut because your little sister still has all the magical ideas. So just leave it alone, you know. And I was right before I got on the phone with you. I was actually talking to both of them, and automatic, Dad, Laney Wilson's new clothes came out in Boot Barn, and I was wondering if I could have some of that for Christmas. You know, they're already on Christmas, so
Well, there's parents' Christmas, and then there's Santa. That's a whole other thing. So
that's a whole different deal, man.
yeah, I saw you perform a version of Merle Haggard's song, "If We Make It Through December," and I'm wondering if that's a favorite of yours, or if that has any special meaning to you.
When I was working, Brandy and I just got married, very broke, newlyweds. You know, you're mixing ramen noodles and mac and cheese and a little bit of hamburger meat for your meals, and um, we'd gone to my parents for Christmas. We in a relative's Christmas card, I put $20. It was the last $20 I had in my wallet. I put $20 in there, and on the way home, you know, the low fuel light comes on, and we didn't have debit cards and credit cards and things like that. And she said, you know, that was it. That's all we had till the first of the year or the first of the month, and it was kind of depressing because I felt like, you know, what have I drugged this girl into? She married this guy that can't even afford to stop and get fuel, and you know, I wonder if she's doubting me or you know all these things. And so we kind of had a teary moment. You know, we get home and I'm standing out in the yard and crying a little bit about, you know, like where, you know, this sucks so bad. And on the way home, Merle Haggard, If We Make It Through December, comes on the radio. Well, of course, now we're both crying because we're wondering, are we going to actually make it through December? And at the time, I'm with BMI now, but at the time I was with ASCAP for my publishing. And as an independent artist, there's a lot of we've since taken things to court and got them changed, but back then they didn't really pay independent artists very consistently. And I went to the mailbox for some reason, and I pulled out two $2,500 checks from ASCAP, and so that song has always been ingrained in my mind of if we're going to make it through December, but we did.
That's a great story. And probably a lot has a lot better ending than, the one that Merle Haggard had.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We're still here.
Well, Cody, I just have one more question for you. What does it mean to you to be a Texan?
It means everything because, we as Texans were a country first. There was, Native American wars. There was Mexican wars. There was a lot of sacrifice on all sides to create what this thing that we call Texas is. There were people that marched from Tennessee and all over the South to come and help defend the Alamo for Texas independence. And in Huntsville, Texas, there's a big statue of Sam Houston. People don't recognize that if that man hadn't had the vision that he had for the state of Texas, we wouldn't have been Texas. We'd have been split up into different territories. Mostly, probably of it would have went to Mexico, and it reshaped America. And I think that that's a very, very important thing to instill when you are a Texan in your kids to say, hey, look, we have a different sense of pride than a lot of other states. And we still do. Everything's bigger and better in Texas. The slogan, don't mess with Texas. And I've got a big tattoo right here of Texas over my heart. And it's probably where I'll always stay.
Great to hear. And you don't get much more committed than that tattoo, do you?
No.
Well, Cody Johnson, congrats on the new music and the tour and everything you have going on. And it's great talking to you. And thanks so much for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Thanks, Sid. I appreciate your time.